Horror remains one of gaming's staple genres, with multiple enormous titles and franchises springing up over the years that everyone loves and everyone loves even more to talk about. However, whilst many of these popular franchises still receive new entries to this day, plenty have fallen to the wayside, being cancelled, or just simply forgotten. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 criminally underrated horror video games. Number 8, The Persistence. The Persistence is one of the most underrated PSVR games you can play. Now, before you go and say, Josh, only like 10 people bought a PSVR, why are you kicking off this list with such a niche game and then skip to the next entry? There actually is a VR-less port of the title that made its way to consoles and PC. Trapped on a space station, The Persistence's roguelike nature means that each new section of the station is procedurally generated, and as you venture further into the depths, you run the risk of losing the loot and gear that you've acquired to tackle the ship's various monsters out to get you. Despite the inherent repetition of the genre, The Persistence manages to constantly conjure up new content with each new run. If you like your sci-fi horror and you like your roguelikes, then you should absolutely check out this game that you probably never even knew existed. Number 7, Visage. If I'm gonna get a chance to shout out Visage, then you can bet your bottom ass that I'm going to take you up on it. Riffing on PT, Visage sees you waking up in an initially unassuming suburban home. It's night, the place is empty, and it quickly becomes apparent that you're being haunted by something. Through a handful of vignettes, Visage takes you on a whirlwind horror adventure, keeping you on your toes through unpredictable scares and a small environment that is constantly changing and finding new ways to terrify you. Though initially small scale, like I said, the ambition of the title grows with each new chapter until you're heading into dreamscapes filled with rivers of blood. The set pieces are inventive, the monsters are frighteningly ghoulish, and the tale being told is suitably dark. If you're sad PT got cancelled, then pick this game up instead. Number 6, Parasite Eve. It's not too often that video games are based on novels, but there are some excellent examples of this, such as The Witcher and Metro series, and this next entry is right at home next to those. Parasite Eve is actually an unauthorized sequel to the novel of the same name, following New York City police officer Aya during an attempt to stop the Eve, a woman set on destroying all life on Earth. The survival game features a plausible real-time combat system where you can move around to dodge attacks from the mutated monsters across the varying New York-based locations. What distinguishes the combat system is that the player is granted some strange powers referred to as a parasite energy that allows the player to access some useful abilities in combat and in the story, as it binds you to the villain until one of you dies. The weapons and powers can be upgraded as well across the 5-day spanning story to give you the best chance to save NYC. Parasite Eve is an absolutely iconic title which should be remembered for some interesting story moments, such as an entire opera audience spontaneously combusting and dying at the beginning of the game. Number 5, Mundawn. Unlike some of the games on this list, I can at least see why Mundawn didn't pick up much steam. It's a small indie horror game made by a handful of people, and it isn't your conventional jump scare fest. Instead, the title drops you into the middle of the Alps, as a character attending their grandfather's funeral. Upon returning to the secluded village of Mundawn, it's apparent that the death wasn't natural causes, and that there's something haunting this town, brought to life by the beautiful hand-drawn artwork that makes up the character models and environments. Seriously, for as much as I like roaming around photoreal areas waiting for a monster to jump out at me, the atmosphere of Mundawn offers a different kind of horror vibe, one that is executed to perfection. If you enjoy stuff like The Witch and Midsummer and The Wicker Man, then get on this. Number 4, Siren. Siren, or Forbidden Siren, depending on your region, is a survival horror game released for the PS2 in 2003. Following a supernatural disaster in a fictional Japanese town called Hanuda, you are thrust into the shoes of 10 survivors who are trying to escape the town and unravel the mysterious happenings in the area. The cataclysmic event has caused a strange affliction to some of the townspeople, leading them to bleed from the eyes, which, according to my doctor anyway, is not good, and become hostile towards each of the protagonists due to a mysterious substance known as the Red Water. Across 10 non-linear levels, you must sneak past enemies using a psychic ability referred to as sightjacking, which allows you to see and hear from the perspective of other characters, both hostile and friendly. Combat is not the focus in Siren then, so don't expect to be whacking fools with planks of wood or anything like that, as the game encourages you to avoid confrontation, since the undead enemies cannot be permanently killed, and you are burdened with limited stamina for attacks. And just be careful, of the 10 survivors, not everyone is going to make it out alive, so be careful. Number 3, Nocturne. The Prohibition and Great Depression era is not really a time frame explored enough in video games, let alone horror video games, but Nocturne uses this unique setting incredibly effectively. Originally released in 1999 for the PC, you play as a character known only as the Stranger, who works for a fictional government organization referred to as Spook House, who are tasked with investigating and eliminating monstrous threats from the United States of America. Across Nocturne, you take on a bunch of different paranormal cases, each containing a new supernatural monster. Vampires, werewolves, zombies, and demons, the game has you covered no matter which subgenre you prefer. It's a proper globe-trotting tale too. You'll find yourself battling the undead in a Wild West town, accompanying a half-vampire to explore a castle in Germany, and even taking on Al Capone's zombie mobsters in Chicago. In terms of gameplay, Nocturne utilizes pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D characters seen through fixed camera angles. You know, the classic Resident Evil model. With innovative camera angles though, stunning backgrounds for the time, and high-quality character models, Nocturne is a sadly lesser-remembered survival horror classic that serves up a campy but fun monster hunting narrative. Number 2, The Suffering. It's somewhat rare that games allow you to switch between third and first-person perspectives, especially in the horror genre. I mean, The Evil Within eventually patched in a first-person mode, while Resident Evil has just announced a third-person mode for Resi 8. The Suffering, though, is a 2004 horror shooter that allowed you to do just this, following a prisoner on death row accused of murdering his family, although he has no memory of doing it. So you control this dude called Talk as you attempt to escape the prison, facing ghosts and grotesque creatures that you battle with melee and range combat using a variety of weaponry. Like most of the best horror games, you have to manage an insanity meter as well, which fills as you defeat enemies, transforming the character into a monstrous form when full that allows the player to tear through hostiles with devastating attacks. While in this form as well, your health will start to deplete, and you will die if you do not transform back in time. There is also a morality system in place that allows Talk to make certain decisions throughout the story to influence one of 3 unique endings. Number 1, Cold Fear. Resident Evil 4 is considered to be one of the very best survival horror games of all time. Hell, it's considered to be one of the best video games of all time. And inevitably, all games in the genre were compared to it for years to come. And Cold Fear unfortunately released just a couple of months after Resident Evil 4 and was overshadowed by it at every level, fading into obscurity over the years and becoming forgotten by the masses. Which sucks because while, yeah, it's obviously no Resident Evil 4, Cold Fear deserved a way more than to be a one and done. This title takes place on a tanker at sea, which has become infested with zombie-like monsters. Visually, it still looks pretty impressive to this day as well, and while the over-the-shoulder combat is a little bit clunky, it is still serviceable. I mean, there's a reason that the people who played Cold Fear still talk about Cold Fear all these decades later, and that's because it absolutely ruled. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you play any of these horror games, or did they pass you by as well? Let me know, and also give me a message if you do decide to check them out. But in the meantime, could you also please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.